My name is Judge Frank Caprio, and after decades on the bench, you'd think I've seen every kind of case you could possibly imagine. Tickets, violations, summonses, excuses. They come in steady like the tide. And yet, every now and then, a day arrives that reminds me justice isn't found in legal books, but in people's stories. I've always believed that if you listen closely enough, every person who stands in front of you carries something worth understanding. And the story I'm about to tell you, well, it reminded me why compassion is not weakness, but strength. It was a cold Monday morning, the kind where the courthouse steps still shine from the frost. The courtroom was full, people bundled in coats, rubbing their hands for warmth, hoping their cases would be quick. I had already heard a handful of routine matters when the clerk leaned toward me and quietly said, "Judge, the next one might be important." I nodded. "Send him up." Case of Elena Marquez for parking violations, failure to appear, and overdue fines, the clerk announced. A woman in her late 20s stepped forward. She looked nervous, not the kind of nervous that comes from guilt, but the kind that comes from life being heavier than she can carry. Her dark hair was tied loosely, her coat too thin for the weather, and she held a small envelope in her hands, gripping it as though letting go might cause everything in her life to fall apart. "Good morning," I said gently. "Good morning, Your Honor," she replied, her voice soft and controlled, though I could sense the tremble underneath. "You have 3 tickets," I said, scanning the file. 2 for parking in a restricted zone near the hospital, and 1 for an expired meter. You also missed your original hearing date." She nodded. "Yes, Your Honor." Before I could ask anything more, I heard a small cough, a child's cough, from the second row of the courtroom. A boy around 10 years old sat quietly, watching his mother with a seriousness far beyond his age. "Is that your son?" I asked. "Yes," she said quietly. "This is Mateo." The boy lifted his hand in a small wave. A few people in court smiled. I did too. "Well, hello, Mateo," I said warmly. "I see you're being a good support system today." He nodded, straightening his posture like a little soldier. I turned back to his mother. "All right, Miss Marquez, why don't you tell me what happened?" She hesitated. "I'm not sure where to begin." "Start anywhere. I'm listening." And then the story unfolded slowly, painfully, honestly. She explained that the first ticket happened on a morning she had parked in a hospital emergency zone. Her father had collapsed at home from a sudden stroke, and she had rushed to get him to the hospital. She stayed with him for hours, completely forgetting the car, until a nurse reminded her it needed to be moved. But by the time she got outside, the ticket was already there. I didn't even look at it. I just stuffed it in my bag. That day, everything was blurry. The second ticket was the next week. Her father was still in the ICU, and she parked in the same area. She knew she shouldn't, but she was afraid. Afraid it would be the last time she saw him conscious. Afraid of missing that moment, the goodbye that so many people never get. "My father raised me alone," she said, voice breaking just slightly. "I'm all he has. And Mateo, my son, he loves his grandfather more than anything." The third ticket, the expired meter, happened when she had fallen asleep in her car outside the hospital after a 14-hour shift at the diner where she worked. She was exhausted, emotionally drained, trying to split herself in two, one half working endlessly to stay afloat, the other half sitting beside a hospital bed hoping for a miracle. "And the missed hearing?" I asked gently. She swallowed hard. "He passed away that morning. I didn't even look at the date. I didn't look at anything." Her voice cracked. For a moment, the courtroom was completely silent. Even people waiting for their cases sat with softened expressions. You could feel the heaviness settle over the room. I glanced at the boy. Mateo was staring at the floor, and it struck me that children carry grief quietly, with a silence that sometimes speaks louder than tears. I leaned forward slightly. "Mateo," I said, "do you mind if I ask you something?" He looked up. "Yes, Your Honor." "You miss your grandfather?" His eyes glistened. He nodded. "A lot." "What was he like?"
He took a breath. He used to walk me to school, every day, even when he was sick. And he'd always say, "Be kind, Mateo. Kindness is the only thing that never runs out." He rubbed his sleeve across his cheek. "I'm trying to remember that." I felt something shift in the room. You can't schedule moments like this. They arrive unannounced, and they remind you that human beings are not case numbers. I turned back to the mother. "Miss Marquez, how much do you currently owe in fines?" She opened the envelope with trembling fingers. $470. "And can you pay that?" She shook her head. "Your Honor, I'm working double shifts. I'm behind on rent. And I'm doing the best I can alone. I'm just trying." Her voice cracked again. I sat silently for a moment, thinking of what justice should look like in this situation. Some might say the law is the law. Others might say rules can't be bent. But I've always believed that justice without compassion isn't justice. It's punishment. "Miss Marquez," I finally said, "I want to tell you something." She looked up, bracing herself. "You've been carrying a burden that would crush most people. You rushed your father to the hospital not once, but twice. You worked long hours to keep your home afloat. You supported your son through the hardest loss a child can face. And you did all of this while trying to survive grief yourself." She wiped her eyes, embarrassed to be crying in a courtroom. "Your father," he continued, "sounds like a man who understood the value of kindness, and I think he'd want that kindness extended to you today." I paused, then spoke clearly. "I'm going to dismiss all 3 tickets." The courtroom murmured. Mateo gasped softly. His mother's hand flew to her mouth. "And as for the fines," I added, "you will owe $0. She shook her head, tears falling freely now. "Your Honor, I thank you. I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," I replied. "Just keep going. Take care of your son, and take care of yourself. You are doing better than you think." Mateo chimed in, voice small but sincere. "Thank you, Judge." And I couldn't help smiling. "Your grandfather raised a good young man, and I think you'll make him proud." As they walked out, I watched them, mother and son, holding each other a little tighter, walking with a bit more hope than when they entered. Some might say I just dismissed a few parking tickets. But to me, it wasn't about the tickets at all. It was about recognizing a moment where compassion could lift someone who was sinking. It was about honoring a father who believed kindness was the one thing that never runs out. And I've learned this. Justice is not measured only in fines, rules, or punishments. Justice is measured in humanity, in understanding, in the ability to look at someone and say, "I see your struggle, and you're not alone." That day in that small courtroom, kindness didn't run out, and I hope it never does.